Welcome to Art Talk Music. My guest today is the wonderful Mr. Micky Patten. Micky started and ran what, in my opinion, was New Mexico's premier music shop, Grandma's Music and Sound. It was so cool sitting down and picking his brain about his start, selling instruments, moving to New Mexico and starting the business, and what really made everything run. It was really cool understanding his moving into retirement and starting to play quite a bit of bass. Micky plays around town with a wonderful group, which my teacher also performs in, titled the Charlie Christian Project. Definitely recommend you check them out around town. They feature the wonderful Bobby Shue on trumpet and Mr. Cal Haynes on drums. Now, I know you're going to enjoy this conversation as much as I did. As always, I encourage you to subscribe, to like, to share. If you're listening to us on iTunes, then give us a rating and a review. For now, please help me welcome the wonderful Mr. Micky Patten. And we're live with Mr. Micky Patten. How you doing, sir? What's going on?
Hey, Claudio,
man?
good.
Thank you so much for being on Art Talk Music, man. It's great to see you. It's great to have you over at my house and get a little chance to talk some story with you, talk a little bit about Grandma's music, about what you're up to now, and kind of how the whole musical landscape has changed for you now that you're not running the Grandma's business, but just kind of playing your instrument and being a musician.
Sure, sounds cool.
So let's start with how you got to New Mexico. Where are you from originally, Micky?
Michigan, northern, northwest Detroit suburbs, and I came here in 82 and opened the store towards the end of 82.
That's awesome. Did you always kind of have in mind you wanted to open a music store, or what led you to eventually do that? Did you study that in school, business, or
no?
What?
I studied music in school, and I worked at a store in Michigan, in Royal Oak, Michigan, that's not there anymore, but before I came down here. And first thing I did when I got down here is went and applied at just about every store in town, and I didn't get a job.
Yes, sir. Okay.
I couldn't even get a job teaching. Nobody knew me or anything. And then also I noticed that nobody was discounting strings.
Nobody was discounting strings.
Yeah. In Detroit, you could get strings 2 for $1 anywhere, and here you paid list price. I think you might get a little something off, and so I saw a need in the market.
Whoa.
Yeah. And there were some good stores. Some nice people at some nice stores here.
Around that time, what were the stores? I know none of them are around.
Down the street from us was Creative Music, was Ross Duplessis, and then on Manal was King Music. Alex Sanchez, and the Reardon family ran Riedling Music, which was the oldest store in town.
Wow.
Downtown was Wild West Music. At that time, they were on First Street, I believe. What else? There was the guitar shop that Mikey Wright ran or worked at on Carlisle there. Do you remember that one?
No, but I know about. I've recently come to know about Micky Wright and his whole story of incredible.
That was a nice shop, too.
Taking.
There was some nice stores and stuff, but nobody was really doing pro deals, like they did up in Michigan.
Totally. That's crazy. So you moved here in 1982, you said, right?
Yep.
And then you started the store the next year?
No, I started it that year. I needed to make a living. I spent a little bit of time going from store to store to try to get a job, either sales or teaching or something, and then my brother, who lived here in Albuquerque, just says to me, well, open your own. And I was like, with what, my good looks, And he said he could help me get a line of credit at the bank.
Wow.
And so I had very modest funds to start, and I sold a lot of my own gear.
Wow. So the initial store was the location that I first remember was at the one over here just off of Juantabo and Lomas?
We were at the corner of Juantabo and Lomas in the corner of the shopping center. The first store was 1,200 square feet, right in the corner.
Wow. Where Hastings kind of took over recently and now it's closed
but we
out,
were down right in the corner. And back then there was a pharmacy and, believe it or not, a little supermarket in there.
Oh, wow.
And it was a really nice little shopping center. We were right in the corner. And I always tell people the service department was so small back then. Rob Clemens, who passed away, was our service tech, that you had to open the door to fall down.
Wow. So at that time, what was the music scene like? I mean, I know Uncle Mike moved here. Michael Anthony, we're speaking about, moved here, I think, in 1980. Right?
Yeah.
So there were some cats on the scene playing. I know I've seen videos of Dimmy playing and
Dimmy, Dan Dowling, Michael Anthony, Clyde Hankins, a lot of really good guitarists. Lewis Wynn, a lot of good guitar players around here. Yep. And then what helped our store the most was David Ostrovitz, because right out our back door, literally at lunchtime and after school, the Manzano kids would come over.
Oh, yeah.
And he had at one time about 350 students.
David Ostrovitz, I'm so honored to be able to say that John Maestas and I kind of teamed up. One of the teachers, at Manzano High School had reached out to me and asked me, Claudio, you're an alum. I'm writing to you and John to kind of ask if you guys would be up to help push the process through of nominating Mr. O to get into the APS Hall of Fame for the work that he's done. And this just happened a couple months ago. And so, me and John kind of put our heads together. I did the brunt of the work and just kind of getting some of the letters of recommendation and everything worked out beautifully to where he's going to be honored. As a matter of fact, this coming weekend, this Friday night.
That's right. I saw that. I read that. To him. By the way, he and I went to the same high school in Michigan.
Now, I was going to bring that up. Because he, of course, was also
Oak Park High, Oak Park, Michigan. Yep.
That's awesome. You guys are both Michigan natives.
Yep.
How crazy that, of course, Mr. O, David Ostrovitz, ended up teaching at the school that was right in front of Grandma's.
Right, yeah. He babysat the store when I went to my first NAMM show.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is so cool, man. I mean, I remember the hundreds of guitars that he had in the guitar room. And I know that all of those over the years came from Grandma's, through Grandma's. And so that was a beautiful thing. You were also speaking about somebody off air before we started who was, a beautiful natured, just an awesome person for the community, but an incredible salesperson. Tell me a little bit about this guy, about Ryan.
Well, Ryan, when we opened the store, the first really full-time employee we had was Brad Clement, who's a wonderful person and still a dear friend, and that's Ryan's older brother. And he started, I believe it was the first year we were open, and basically Brad and I were running the store and so forth. And then Ryan moved back in 86, and he was working at a guitar center in Sherman Oaks, I believe. And Brad came up to me and said, would you hire my little brother? And I said, well, family, I'm not really comfortable hiring family. Well, just try them and see. It turns out one of the best things that ever happened to us. He was personable, knowledgeable, hardworking. You couldn't ask for a better person. And like I've told you before, he was really the face of Grandma's way more than I was, because he was the person that people dealt with, I was in the back doing orders, placing orders, paying bills, and then Patty, my wife, of course, we got married, and she was paying the bills, and I was placing the orders, and we oversaw the business, but Ryan was really the person that dealt with the customers.
Right. Without sales, no business can really, succeed.
That's right. Yep. And he had a following and still does, even though the store's not there anymore.
I was going to mention that because Ryan is, I went to Grandma's first when I bought my very first QSC speaker. But when I needed when I finally had saved up enough money to buy my second, I reached out to him. Of course, it was once Grandma's had closed the stores. I reached out to you and asked you, and you would pass me along his phone number and said,
he took care of you too, didn't he?
He always does.
Yeah.
He's the man. And he was the person that I reached out to. Of course, initially it was Patty, but Patty then to Ryan that got me in touch to be able to go to my first NAMM show as well.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about the transition of you guys moving from that store that was where I initially came to know you guys. The transition happened, what, in 2006, 2005, 6, 7, somewhere around there? 2008?
04 we moved.
04.
Yeah, we built the store in 03.
Wow.
And just another quick side note is that we started off as a guitar shop because I was a guitar player that moved down here and had some guitar gear to sell, and we picked up Washburn and Martin and stuff like that. But we couldn't get the major lines, and back then it was Kramer because of Eddie Van Halen and Fender, of course, or Gibson. We couldn't get any of those major lines, so we gradually phased out guitars. And because Ryan was so strong with the new MIDI technology, we were an Ensoniq dealer and an EMU system, sequential circuits, and stuff like that. And we didn't sell guitars until 1989, after Ryan started working there.
Wow.
And then we got Fender and Kramer and Gibson and so forth. But we moved the store in 03. We built the store. Finally, we thought, well, we're outgrowing everything in Manzano Center. We moved twice in that to bigger locations. And then the second location we added on to twice. So we went to an architect, Schlegel Lewis, and we said, we're going to build a store, and we had to get a mortgage and so forth. And we designed the store from the ground up, the one on Course, and moved there and built it in 03, moved in 04.
So when you initially started the store, when you first moved here, what was, if you don't mind me asking, because of course me as an aspiring, not just musician, but I mean, hopefully we all aspire to be able to have our feet in many different, buckets of water, or, the expression is not really like that, but be able to do a lot of different things. And me as an aspiring artist, businessman, musician, obviously podcaster, and all these other things that I do, I also understand what it is like in having put together my very first album by myself, what it meant to not go ask for money or not do a GoFundMe, but take a line of credit out from the bank.
It's a risk, isn't it?
It's an incredible risk. I mean, and the only real asset that I had to myself that I owned was my car. And I put my car down and they gave me $5,000 of line of credit to be able to fund the first part of my first album, which I recorded the winter of 2015 to 2016. And from there, the album then ended up costing me about, somewhere in the vicinity of, at the end of the day, between about $14,000 to $17,000.
Wow!
And just to have taken out that $5,000 line of credit, though, was what initially started my initial push into kind of the train that became the story of part one. And I mean, I made a little bit of money back. I certainly did not make all of my money back yet, but I mean, it's a long-term investment thing for me. And thinking about taking a line of credit out and things like that. What was the line of credit out that you took when you started Grandma's? Do you remember?
Well, my first Coast wholesale order, when Clyde Hankins was the rep back then, was $1,000. That was my first order I could actually write a check for. And actually, the line of credit we got at First National Bank on Juan Tabo, Nadine Martin was our loan officer. My brother co-signed, was $20,000.
Wow.
And that's how the store really started to get some inventory.
Of course,
bless your heart, just like me, you had to pay it back, right?
Hello, come on. And thank goodness that with the enormous help of my mother, who's kind of like my financial advisor, I was able to pay back the loan within a year's time.
Look at that.
And I'm grateful as heck. I mean, it wasn't through the hard work of music. It's also because I started dabbling a lot in the art world and started being an art assistant to my father, helping him sell sculptures around the different art festival circuit scene around the country. But I mean, all of us dream of doing some things sometimes that really take that leap of faith that a line of credit from the bank is, and pursuing your dreams to then eventually have a store, have it be successful, and then eventually get to build your own stores. I mean, that's a huge accomplishment and a huge dream for anybody.
Thank you.
What was it like when you were ready to move to the new store? I mean,
Well, that was a much bigger line of credit.
I can't even imagine. That store is how many tens of thousands of square feet?
15,000 square feet.
15,000 square feet.
Yeah, it was a big gamble and risk too. When we looked at the location for the store, we really took a map of Albuquerque and we said, well, the only direction Albuquerque can grow in is towards Rio Rancho because it's blocked in almost every direction. So we thought that that's just about the center of town. One of the things that we really didn't think of much is people in Albuquerque really don't like to cross the river for obvious reasons.
It's true. It
is so true. People that live on the east side like to shop on the east side. The west side will shop on the east side some, but and it turned out that it really wasn't that good of a location for a lot of musicians that live around because we heard plenty of people complaining about the drive over.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And we were appreciative, though, that they made the drive over.
Of course.
But yeah, it was a big risk. It was a big commitment and stuff, and we just thought that our heart's in running a good store, the best store we possibly can, and that's the way you do it. You get your own building and
that's right.
Design it from the ground up.
So, talk me through a little bit of how the conclusion of Grandma's came to be, because I know there was rumblings of a story that Ryan was going to take the store over and continue it. And then
that's right, exactly.
The ball kind of got dropped somewhere, or I don't know if it was the ball got dropped or that the store and the inventory and everything just didn't add up. But
well, what happened basically to the store was Patty and I were ready to retire. We did it long enough.
Yes, sir.
And we thought, okay, well, and retail, it was brick and mortar retail had plenty of issues with the advent of the internet and so forth, and we had brokers constantly trying to put it on the market and sell it. You've got a really gold mine here you can sell. We never felt we did. It's just it's a mom and pop music store. But we thought that Ryan may want to continue with it, and since he knew all the customers and dealt with every aspect of the business except for paying the bills, that's the logical thing to do is just turn it over to him. So what we planned on doing in the spring of 2017 was to downsize it so it's more manageable for him.
Sure.
To take our equity out of the building, to close that location, to move it across the street. We had leases drawn up, everything ready to go. And then, I think about a month before we finally closed, we sent notices to all our vendors that we're terminating, and that there's a new entity, and it's Ryan, and he will have his store, and we gave the address and so forth. So we cut off the lines. Just before that, 3 or 4 days literally before we closed, I brought Ryan into the office, and just because I love him so much, I said, do you know what you're getting into? You've run the showroom for years and dealt with customers, but you really haven't paid the bills and stuff, and I don't want to sit here and see you have trouble and struggle. So basically he thought about it for a day or two and decided, you're right, I don't think I want to do it. So, and then we couldn't continue at that point because we already terminated.
Sure, of course.
So it really wasn't a big deal at all for us, although every gig I go on now is, when are you going to open another store?
Of course, man, because even the name, which is going to be one of my next questions, is it really speaks to what it was. You know what I mean? It's like going to your grandma's. It's like, you get that sense of love and family there.
Yeah, that's right. That was a good point.
Everyone, from Manny to Ryan to people in the sound and the text that you had there to the entire experience was like going to family's place. And
miss all those people, Claudio, including the people that haven't worked there for years.
Mm-hmm. Sure, man, sure. Because a lot of different people worked there over the years and had that opportunity as kind of a stepping board for where they were moving to next or what they were doing next. But
hundreds of people went through that place.
We all miss it,
Yeah, I do too. There's a lot about it. But, the two of us had enough because business wasn't good the last few years, and it was tough to keep a store that big going.
So you already hinted at it, but one of the things that I had in mind was, of course, the advent of the internet and how much that not just affected the store, but if you guys were able to adapt, because I remember, going on your website constantly to see the product you guys had and stuff, were just sales, it was just a drop from the age of online selling in general.
price-wise, we could compete with anybody on the internet, and that's what we always were. And I told you that's how I started. There was nobody giving deals. Price-wise, the internet wasn't any problem at all. Right. Selection-wise, big problem.
Got you. Because everyone in selection.
You come in, you want an American Standard Strat in Lake Placid blue with the maple fingerboard. We might not have it.
Online,
good chance we won't.
Right.
We might have the red one and the sunburst and the Olympic white, but not that one. And so that was you can't, and we knew that all along. You can't compete with the internet on selection.
Sure.
Price-wise, no problem. That wasn't. Occasionally, there was something online that was tough to match or beat, but usually that wasn't the issue.
Right.
And we took care of people that way. It was always important for us to know that they couldn't get it any cheaper. We needed to make a living, but we also knew that musicians need deals.
It's the truth. Yeah.
Yep.
So the relationship with everyone in buying their first guitar, their first nice guitar, is it's something that you always have burned into your mind, And I've got many of those experiences with grandmas. But what were some of the experiences in music stores in Michigan that really kind of you have memorable experiences of that? Of course, you're talking about deals, which obviously jumps out to anyone. You walk into a store, it's like 2 for 1. It's like, what? Oh, what is this?
Well, you would expect that, wouldn't you? Getting 2 for 1 as a professional musician?
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's the way it was. In Michigan at the time, it was Wonderland Music, Gus Zappi, Pyramid, Pontiac Music and Sound. There was Strings and Things, which I worked at, and we were Gibson and Martin dealers, and then that was during what they called the folk scare, so there was other Mossman and other more esoteric brands of acoustic guitars.
Yeah.
But our store gave okay deals. Gus Zappi's, which recently closed after 70 years or something, on 8 Mile Road was the big dealer. That's where the pros went. And Gus was an old accordion player, but then as the kids grew up, he started selling, the other brands and, the more rock and roll stuff, and that's where everybody went. I ran into a lot of locals there that were good players.
So why the name Grandma's?
When I went to college, I went to the University of Minnesota, and I didn't finish freshman comp and had to go to summer school. And I went to Duluth, Minnesota, and there was one jazz gig in town, and it was at a club. There was a restaurant club on Lake Superior called Grandma's. And I just thought, that's perfect.
That is awesome. I think it's a powerful experience to have played in a club and then to be able from the club to connect it to something.
That's all it was. I just thought it was a cool name.
So when did you and your wife meet? Because you made it sound like you met Patty here.
Yeah, I did. I went out, what was it, the year 2000 to a club that was at Eubank and Wantabo because we just sold a DJ system there, and she was there, and that's how we met and got married a year later.
Wow. Yeah. Did she approach you or did you approach her? Do you remember?
I approached her.
Yeah.
And she ran the No Appointments hair salons in Albuquerque and all over the state of New Mexico. She ran 18 of those. Wow. And then she ran some the Cottom ski rental shops and stuff, and she had really good business experience. So as soon as she got down there, she cleaned up a lot of messes we made.
Wow. But how crazy that you guys were both business savvy, to your own.
Well, her more
minds.
than me.
Sure, I was. Obviously, it sounds like she was running many, many stores around the state.
Those look cool. Let's get them. And she was like, okay, and then you can figure out how to pay for them too.
Oh man, yeah, she definitely seems like quite a yin to yang. I remember it was many years ago now, but doing a gig with you out in Corrales, I think it was, or like out where you would go towards Bernalillo, but you go right towards that brewery out there. Mm-hmm. And she brought out this big old camera and filmed it, and then was so awesome and sent me in the mail a DVD of it, and it was just like, damn man. This is awesome.
She's the reason that the store lasted so long. Ryan and her, Ryan could, had great relations with a lot of customers, and she made sure that everything was done right by, tax preparation and being able to have cash flow and the inventory paid for and everything like that. That was all payroll. That was all her.
So when she came into the picture, did she kind of lessen her job at the other at the hair salons that she was?
Oh managing? Yeah, no, she was done with that when that happened. Actually, they sold the hair salons.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so that's when she went into the ski rental business, and then as soon as we met, she came over to the store and started running things almost immediately.
Wow.
We fired the old bookkeeper, and she got in there and took over.
That's something else. All right, so tell me a little bit about your transition out of Grandma's, because even before then you'd been, taking bass lessons and, are a fine both guitar player and bass player, but it seemed like you started gigging a little more out and about, initially on bass. Is that right?
I started playing bass in 2009.
Mm-hmm.
I studied with Ola Vola, Matt Brewer, and Mark
Tatum.
Mark Tatum. And love all three of those guys.
Beautiful.
Wonderful players and great advice from all of them, although sometimes conflicting advice.
Yeah, man, when you're going to three different cats, it does it a different way. So you played guitar when you were young.
When I was in Michigan, the gigs I had there were mostly jazz and mostly guitar. And then I moved here, and this is the truth. In the first, 3 decades I was here, I did 5 gigs. In the last decades I was here, I did 500 gigs.
Seriously. And a lot of them have been on the bass, right?
Yeah, mostly on the bass. Yeah.
I mean, I know, and I've hired you to help me out with hosting the jam session, and you've played guitar sometimes and bass.
Yeah.
So it's like, there's not a lot of cats that do that. So tell me about, some of the projects that you've started. I don't know if it was initially began by you or if it was Bobby or if it was Michael's idea to start the Charlie Christian project, but talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, Michael always credits me for starting that, but the truth is we both always had an enormous passion for Charlie Christian, as I'm sure you have.
Of course.
Any guitar player has to acknowledge him as a very, even horn players and other rhythm section instruments, he was one of the most important guys ever. When I did my senior recital, which was in jazz in college, literally a third of the program was Charlie Christian tunes. I just loved him that much. And so, Michael and I talked about it, and Le Chat Lunatic was doing some of the Django-y stuff, and doing a fine job with that. And so we thought, well, nobody's doing Charlie Christian. Here's some Americans in here. And the fact that he was from Oklahoma and, kind of local to around here.
Now, I didn't even know that. So do you know where in Oklahoma Charlie was from?
He was born in Bonham, Texas, and was raised in Oklahoma City.
Wow.
Yep.
And he was born in the teens, right? Because he died in the 50s, 60s?
Oh, no, he died in 41.
Excuse me. Okay.
He lived to 25 years old.
Wow, so he was born in the 20s.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Wow.
Yeah, he didn't live long at all.
So you guys play out quite a bit. Tell me about a little bit of the other projects or groups that you play with quite a bit, because you play with a whole lot of different people.
I mean, I do anything that's I do mostly jazz, although I'm trying to, in fact, I am looking at other things to do. I love improvised music. That's my main thing.
Yeah.
And jazz is mostly improvised, so that's where I tend towards. But the other projects I'm doing, I play with a whole variety of people. Right now, one of the more exciting things I'm doing is with Diane Richardson and Marietta Benevento. We're doing a Mingus tribute, like the Mingus workshop stuff.
No way.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So
I've got that tomorrow morning. It's a rehearsal for it.
Okay.
It's Phil Arnold and me and Dimmy DeSanti. And we're thinking of Pete Amall on drums, and it's challenging music. Yeah. And the vocals, boy, I don't envy them having to learn that stuff.
I totally understand that, man.
So that's an exciting project.
So does Patty play any instruments, or is she just a music
not at all
enjoyer?
No. A bookkeeper. And photographer, of course,
Yeah. Beautiful, man.
She sold a print at the Corrales 150th anniversary of the Corrales, the old church there. this Church of San Ysidro, and she was delighted with that. That's her second print she sold now. So
that's awesome. Good for her, man. Yeah. It's an incredibly satisfying feeling having someone appreciate your work and
write a check for it.
Fork out a little bit of money. Yeah, seriously.
No, that's right. You're doing well that way.
And I'm blessed to have a wonderful example. In that way, it's almost as if, in the art world, I was kind of like born into the Marsalis family or something like that,
That's cool.
Just having a big leg up, So now tell me, has Charlie Christian Project recorded an album?
No. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I feel inclined to do that.
Do you have any other bands that you've recorded an album with?
No, I don't. I do very little recording. Not my thing. I always say notes should go off into space, never to return.
I like that philosophy. That's beautiful, man. Do you ever hope one day to maybe capture down the road maybe some cool arrangements you put together with a set of guys you like playing with?
No, I don't tend to listen to that stuff. Every now and again, I record myself to see what I need to work on.
Yes.
And there's always plenty there.
Sure.
But no, when I was younger, I did some recording, but since I'm a little older now, I haven't felt compelled to. I admire it greatly. I listen to recordings all the time. I am on YouTube, spinning CDs. I love listening to recorded music. I'm just not one of the things I'm attracted to, at least not now.
Yeah. Have you ever had a relationship with writing music? On the guitar or on the bass,
And when I was in college, we had the University of Minnesota at Morris Contemporary Jazz Ensemble, and I was the composer for it.
Get out. Look out.
And I wrote quite a bit of stuff for that group.
Wow.
And then when I went to graduate school back in Michigan at Oakland University, I studied with Stanley Hollingsworth, and I actually converted to a composition major for my master's degree.
Wow.
But I never finished it because he could compose. And I never felt like I could, not compared to that guy. And I thought, I'm not going to finish this. I actually got 2 credits away from getting the degree, and I dropped out. That's when I moved to New Mexico. I was like, nah, I'm not a composer, not like that guy anyways.
So did that totally push you away from writing from then? So you haven't really written since the Michigan days?
When I met Stanley, it was in his house or in his office at the second story of the music building. And he said to me, would you like to hear my piano concerto I just finished? And I said, sure. And I thought he was going to hand me a cassette tape. And he handed me a ticket to the Detroit Symphony Orchestra with Neville Mariner conducting it.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, that guy could write, and he studied with many. He went to Curtis, and he was a wonderful, wonderful man. He's deceased now too, but he was a wonderful man, a wonderful composer. The advice that he gave me that I'll never forget, he says, Mickey, when you hear a melody, he said, don't sit there and play it on your instrument. Stand up, walk around the room, and see where it wants to go. I thought that was just wonderful advice, and really is appropriate for improvisation too. That's a big part of it. Where does it want to go?
That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, he was a wonderful man.
So the aspect of playing to the aspect of wanting to kind of record something and put something in your own is definitely something I've come to know from meeting so many different musicians is not for everybody, No. But one day, do you think maybe you might dig out some old compositions of yours and record them?
I see your garage band going there. I noodle on that all the time, and
well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Do,
That's at the end of the day, all of us noodle. You know what I mean? And that noodling sometimes happens
turns into
to
something.
Filter out to be something nice that you're like, hey guys, I piece something together on the gig, and you play it, right? And so I don't mean to be an instigator or anything like that, but at the same time, those little things and that, even though of course, the space is where you intend to send the music out to as opposed to get them back to you, to some extent, people once your body has stopped and your spirit transcends, those recordings of what you have done will be forever be there.
Sure, so, that's right.
And obviously, in your case and in everyone's case, the traces of the life that we live and the work that you've done and the lives that you've touched through the work that you've done will always live with everyone else, But as a musician, I always just kind of wonder about that with everyone that I come into contact with, because I know that, if you're musically inclined, there's some part of your brain that's spewing out creativity, and you kind of catch it in some way.
That's right.
And it's whether or not you choose to then take that and kind of mold it to where you then are able to show your friend and say, hey, you want to check out this symphony I just wrote, Right? It's like, anyways, that's certainly an aspiration. All right, so one question I love, kind of moving towards the end of this conversation is one of the questions that I love asking people as a result of a podcast I did with a bass player in New York called Barry Stevenson. He told me about a book by the trumpet player. I hope I'm not always. I feel like I'm always getting his name wrong, but I think it's Art Farmer, and he put a book out of kind of conversations with musicians, and they're not really like interviews because it's not an interviewer speaking to the musician, but it's a friend speaking to a friend. And so the conversations they have in the whole book are just way more, I mean, not to say more or less, but they're profound in a different way. And one of the questions that seems to be a through line theme throughout the book is, what does jazz mean to you?
Oh, that's a good one. I just put that on my lesson for the jazz workshop tonight for jazz improvisation. The first session's tonight, and I put the last thing on their assignment for the week is, why can't jazz be taught? Well, it's an art form, and art cannot be taught. You can learn art, but you can't really teach it. But what does jazz mean to me? It has to be improvised. I don't consider big band music particularly pure jazz, because most of the parts are written in it. Now, there's some improvisation in big band, but if it's not improvised, and jazz to me is usually a cyclical harmonic form that musicians are improvising over.
Yes. Yeah.
But then, on the other hand, it's also a tradition. There are traditions in it and style things and expectations about certain things and stuff. So it's all jazz, But the improvisation is the most important aspect of it. The album that drew me in the last, I don't know how many years, but is Sunday at the Village Vanguard, the Bill Evans. That's the one that I was like, damn.
There's a lot of powerful albums out there that really rock you, right?
Yep, that's right.
A lot of powerful music out there. So, in kind of wrapping up, let's tell the people a little bit about what you've got going on. Obviously, as we're wrapping this up, you're heading to the New Mexico Jazz Workshop later tonight. Tell me about what you're going to do.
Improv there on Monday nights. It's always a wonderful experience. I learn as much as they do, and I try to have people play almost all the time. I don't think that the words really help much in jazz. I think that the experience that they get playing with each other is the most important thing. So just getting that experience. What we always want to do is get rid of the fear and get rid of the anxiety of playing. That if you want to be good, that there's no place for it in there. Same with composing, by the way. Yeah. When you write, and you write beautifully, by the way, Claudio. I've heard some of your stuff, and you can't be afraid. You have to throw it out there. Whatever it means to you, it's got to come out sincere like that.
Yeah, you can't say no in that process. You can't be no to an idea. You got to let it all.
That's right. You got to let it out. That's right. And so that's on Monday nights, and like I said, I'll try to keep them just playing a whole bunch.
How long does that class run? How many weeks?
It's 6 weeks.
So it started. This is the first day of it, right?
Today's day number 1 for this session.
Do you know if people can still sign up halfway through the session, or is it kind of locked in?
Yeah, no, they're welcome. I'll welcome anybody anytime into that.
Beautiful.
We have UNM students this time, and I saw the class list. There are 15 in there.
Awesome.
There are several horns, several rhythm section people, probably a vocalist or two, and
beautiful.
Play and play and play. And then when I teach, this is a new thing for me, but you can teach rhythm. You can teach all about rhythms. You can teach all about harmony, but you really can't teach melody. Because melody is the essence of the art, and you can't tell somebody what to play melodically or rhythmically or harmonically, but you can teach the principles of
rhythm and harmony, right?
Yeah, much easier than melody. Melody is a very personal thing, and that's really what soloing and improvising is all about, is what melodies do you want to create?
That's interesting, man.
Initially
I thought you were going to say feel, but it's so interesting you say melody, because to truly... to be at that point of helping people out, and I'm about to have to put on that teaching cap myself. I'm going to be subbing for Kanoa Kalahiva while he gets his shoulder surgery at the Outpost Performance Space.
Sorry to hear Kanoa needs shoulder surgery.
Me too, man. I hope that it goes well. But I'll be teaching his classes for about 4 weeks.
Oh, cool.
And having to deal with that experience.
He's a great player. I love that guy.
Oh, man. Kanoa's tremendous and a beautiful spirit, But anyways, I digress. We'll be putting this podcast out this week, and so we'll certainly put some information for people to check out the classes and see if they can still in to come in and join those classes as they happen. Do you have any concerts coming up, maybe this weekend or next weekend? Or
no, I have Patty Stevens' class on Thursday, and then a nursing home on Sunday, and then, like I said, next week with Scott Hooker and Jana Nelson, which I'm looking forward to. That'll be fun at Oasis. Beautiful. And just normal stuff. And then the rehearsal with Marietta and Diane and Phil tomorrow.
Beautiful. Awesome, man. I really appreciate you coming on and talking a little bit about, grandmas and about, being an active musician now in your retirement as a retired businessman who, in my opinion, led the most successful music store that I came to know. But it's a pleasure, man, and I appreciate you. I also appreciate you, helping out with the jam session when that comes up. So certainly I'm sure there will be more of that throughout this year.
Cool. I love doing it.
Yeah, man. So y'all keep an eye out for Micky Patten out there. And again, Micky, thank you so much for being on Our Talk Music, my man.
Thanks, Claudio.
Of course. Thank you, brother. That was the episode. Thank you for listening. It was a pleasure talking to Micky about the story of grandmas, and I have such a personal relationship with the store. The guitar that you heard at the very beginning of this podcast, as well as the guitar you're about to listen to, is a guitar that my father purchased from Grandma's, the original location, when I was in 7th grade. So we really, really appreciate everything that Grandma's and Micky and everyone that worked there did for all of the musicians in the community in Albuquerque.